Genghis Khan fans, sit down. He's not even close. Everyone thinks the man who conquered the largest land empire in history sits at the top. He doesn't. From a general who never conquered anything to an emperor whose code still runs the modern world. 5 tiers. Let's climb. This is Tier 5. Hannibal Barca. Ask any military history fan to name the greatest tactician who ever lived, and his name comes up every single time. Cannae, 216 BC. Hannibal takes 50,000 men and surrounds a Roman army almost twice his size. 80,000 Roman soldiers, butchered in a single afternoon. Military academies still teach this battle as the textbook double envelopment. 23 centuries later, nobody's done it better. Then he does it again, and again. Trebia, Lake Trasimene, Cannae, 3 consecutive annihilations of Rome's best legions on their own soil. And after all that, he never takes Rome. 15 years in enemy territory, and still no Rome. The greatest tactician of the ancient world camped on Italian soil for a decade and a half. He wins every battle and loses the war. He couldn't convert tactical genius into a siege of the capital. Couldn't convince Carthage to send reinforcements. Couldn't build a coalition strong enough to finish the job. Rome survived. Carthage didn't. The city was burned to the ground. The earth was salted. Hannibal's own people were erased from history. Because he could break armies but couldn't break a nation. The greatest tactician with 0 conquests. That's Tier 5. And he's not alone here. Xerxes I, the god king of Persia, marched 1 million men into Greece, the largest invasion force the ancient world had ever seen. His response when a storm destroyed his bridge across the Hellespont, he ordered the ocean whipped 300 times and had the engineers beheaded. Didn't fix the logistics, didn't rethink the strategy, just punished the sea. His army starved. His navy sank at Salamis. The god king ran home. 2 legends, both Tier 5. But what about someone who actually won? This is Tier 4, Alexander the Great. 30 years old, 5 million square kilometers, from Greece to Egypt to the edge of India. Not a single defeat in his entire career. Gaugamela. He faces Darius III and a Persian army that outnumbers him 5-1. Alexander punches through the center with his companion cavalry, shatters the Persian line, and sends the King of Kings fleeing on horseback. The largest empire on earth collapses in an afternoon. He's the first commander in history to use siege artillery in open battle. He merges Macedonian phalanxes with cavalry charges into a combined arms system that no ancient army could answer. Every battle, a masterclass. And none of it survived. He built nothing. No legal code, no administrative system, no succession plan. When he died at 32, they asked who should inherit the empire. His answer? To the strongest. That's not a succession plan, that's a detonator. His generals ripped the empire apart within a decade. His half-brother and infant son were both murdered. His corpse was stolen by one of his own commanders. 5 million square kilometers, gone like smoke. The greatest general with 0 permanence. That's his ceiling. Right next to him, Napoleon. Rewrote the legal code of Europe. Conquered nearly every capital on the continent. Then marched 600,000 men into Russia. 20,000 came back. 10 years of empire, undone by one winter. He conquered fast and lost faster. 2 military geniuses. Both hit the same wall. Empires that couldn't survive without them. But what if a conqueror figured out how to make the empire survive on its own? This is Tier 3, and the rules change here. Everything below this tier measured conquest and territory seized and battles won. That metric is a trap. Alexander took 5 million square kilometers and held it for months. The question that separates Tier 3 from the rest: what happens when the conqueror dies? Cyrus the Great, founder of the Achaemenid Empire, 2 million square miles, the largest empire the world had seen. But here's what makes Cyrus different from every name below him. He didn't just conquer, he made the conquered want to stay. Babylon, 539 BC, the most powerful city on earth. Cyrus takes it without burning a single building. Instead of massacring the population, he issues the Cyrus Cylinder, the first recorded declaration of human rights in history. He frees enslaved peoples, restores destroyed temples, allows deported populations to return home. The Jews, captive in Babylon for decades, walk free and rebuild their temple in Jerusalem. The Hebrew Bible calls him Messiah, the only non-Jewish figure to ever receive that title. His empire ran on tolerance. 20 provinces, each governed by local rulers who kept their own laws and languages. No forced conversions, no cultural erasure. The result? Not a single major rebellion during his 30-year reign. And the aftershock? Xenophon wrote the Cyropedia, a manual on Cyrus's leadership philosophy. Thomas Jefferson owned 2 copies. The principle of religious freedom and separation of church and state, the DNA of the First Amendment, traces directly back to a Persian king from 2,500 years ago. Alexander conquered Cyrus's territory, but Cyrus's operating system outlived Alexander's empire by millennia. Conquest isn't about how much land you burn. It's about what still stands when you're gone. Everything above this tier plays by this rule. This is Tier 2, Genghis Khan. If conquests were measured by raw scale alone, this list would end here. 24 million square kilometers, 17.8% of Earth's entire landmass, a quarter of the world's population under one flag. His expansion rate, 642,000 square kilometers per year. Alexander's rate, 396,000. Not even close. And he wasn't just a destroyer. He shattered the feudal aristocracy and built a meritocracy. A blacksmith's son became his supreme general. He unified currencies, standardized trade across the Silk Road, and constructed the Yam relay system, the fastest communication network the medieval world had ever seen. The largest land empire in human history, held together by a system, not just a sword. So why isn't this God tier? Because the Mongol machine had a hard boundary. It ran on horses and grassland. The moment it left the steppe, it broke. Japan, twice, 1274 and 1281. Kublai Khan throws 140,000 men across the sea. Both times the fleet is annihilated by typhoons the Japanese call kamikaze. 70 to 80% of the armada sunk. Vietnam, 3 invasions. The Tran dynasty empties the capital city, burns the crops, and drags the Mongols into jungle guerrilla warfare. The greatest cavalry force on earth can't fight what it can't see. Egypt, 1260. The Mongol horde rolls toward the Mamluks, and then the great Khan Monkey dies. The main army turns around and goes home to elect a successor. The skeleton force left behind is annihilated at Ain Jalut. The empire fractures into khanates that never reunite. Grassland, invincible. Ocean, jungle, and succession crisis, catastrophic failure. The god of land couldn't conquer water. But someone did conquer everything: land, sea, and time itself. Augustus, not the best general, not the largest territory, not the highest body count. None of that matters here. When Augustus took power, Rome was a bleeding corpse. A century of civil war, Caesar assassinated, the Republic in ashes. Every faction armed and ready to tear the state apart. Augustus didn't just stop the bleeding. He rewired the entire machine. He transformed a crumbling republic into an empire that would dominate the Mediterranean for 5 centuries and define Western civilization for 2,000 years. The Pax Romana, 200 years of unbroken peace across an empire of 5 million square kilometers. Roads connecting Britain to Syria. A legal code so precise that modern European civil law still descends from it. A census system, a tax infrastructure, a professional standing army with pensions. The operating system of a superstate, built from scratch. Genghis Khan's empire fractured the moment the succession was disputed. Alexander's empire vanished the moment he stopped breathing. Augustus designed a system that survived assassination, insanity, and incompetence, emperor after emperor, for 500 years. And when Rome finally fell, the code didn't. Latin became the root of French, Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, Romanian, the languages of 500 million people alive today. Roman law became the civil law tradition that governs continental Europe, Latin America, and much of East Asia. Roman roads, Roman arches, Roman concrete, still standing. The Roman calendar? You used it this morning. Genghis Khan conquered the most land. Augustus conquered time. You're still living inside his empire. You just call it something else. Every conqueror on this list built something that crumbled. Augustus built something that became the world. This is God tier. The man who conquered the most land is tier 2. The man who never lost a battle is tier 4. And the man with no famous victories sits alone at the top. Disagree? Drop your list. I'll wait.